Hello and welcome, Erin here. I'm so glad you're here because we are starting a brand new series, and several of my crafty friends and I will be working our way through this set of sketches. They are scrapbook templates on page 28 of the Stampin' Up! May 2025 through April 2026 annual catalog. And Brian is coming in to say hello. Hi, Brian. But we are working on this sketch in the upper left-hand corner, and I'm going to stretch the sketch. So we are actually going to turn this into a double page layout. You can see it's a frame style layout, and they have a cluster in the lower left corner and a little detailing up there. So that is my jumping off point, and let's see how it turns out. Brian says close the catalog. I've had enough of that. So this is the Otterly Adorable collection from Stampin' Up! And I actually am on my second pack of this paper because it has turned out surprisingly perfect for tropical photos. And we were ziplining in Mexico, as you can see there. We've got a group shot of everyone, and it was called Selvatica Extreme Canopy, and it was in Cancun. We were on an incentive trip for the Riviera Maya, and this was really fun. We ended in a pool of water. This is very unusual for Brian. Most of you know Dave. This is his buddy Brian, and he is clearly wanting some attention. So let's pause the camera for a minute and just pay attention to Brian, make him feel special. Well, that was about 2 seconds for you and about 15 minutes for me, but I think Brian is content. So let's go ahead and jump into today's layout. As I mentioned, this is going to be a double page. We are stretching the sketch, and I already know what papers I want to use because I took some time to sketch this out. And if you look at the sketch here, as I mentioned, we've got the frame style layout and then the cluster in the lower corner. So that can be interpreted in so many different ways. You would think the larger piece is probably a photo. This could be a smaller 3x4 photo, and you could use this for your title or embellishments. So using that as a jumping off point, I know I want to use this paper here because we were up in the canopy surrounded by vines, and this paper is absolutely perfect to capture that vibe. Now I want quite a bit of this paper showing, so I have cut this white cardstock to 10.5 inches square. So that gives us a nice border where we're taking in a lot of that pattern around the outside edge there. And for that cluster, so I've got a 4x6 photo of they had us pose. They had this Jeep here with the name of the zip lining place for a photo op, which as a scrapbooker, I was very thankful. And then I thought I would use a portrait style 3x4. So this was up getting ready to start the process of zip lining. This was by far the best zip lining experience I have ever had. It was so much fun. Really, really a good time. So here we have the group photo. We were getting our safety spiel on all the things to do and not do before we headed out on the adventure. And they took a group photo, which is nice because there's a few people that were not in our party, but most of them were fellow close to my heart makers and their significant others. So I'm really glad to have that. So if you recall on the sketch, we've got our frame style layout, and then we've got this big photo here. I've got my smaller 3x4 that's going to overlap, and then if we're following it exactly, we'd kind of have it like that, right? But I'm going to alter it just a little bit and probably put it right about there or so. Now you'll notice I have 5 more photos. I printed these at 3x4. There's my husband looking back over his shoulder as he's sliding down to the next platform, and there's me on the same zip line. And then here's my husband about to drop into the water. I didn't get one of him actually touching down. Well, I did actually, but it was nothing but water. You couldn't really see who was in the picture. It was just a big water spray. The photographer happened to catch me right at the perfect time, and my shoes were like little leather tennis shoes, so I thought I was going to keep them dry by holding them, and I did a pretty good job, but they did get somewhat wet. I wasn't expecting to end up in the pool until we were already on the zip line. And you could opt out of that, but it was so much fun. So I'm glad that we decided to do that. Now, the easiest thing to do when you are creating a companion page is to do a mirror image. And I am going to do just that. So I cut another piece of cardstock at 10.5 inches square. And what I'm thinking is creating a column like this going down. And actually, since these two photos are very similar, I am going to put this one in the center just to break those up a bit. And then these are 4x4 square, and that does include the white borders. So this is what I'm thinking. Now, if you had, more photos, you could stack 4x4 flip flaps and add a bunch of photos that way. And that way you'd have this nice open canvas for embellishing, or you could put your journaling up here, lots of different options. So I definitely want to bring in more pattern paper. Now, if you look at this one here, it has the orange tones, which complement the shirt and helmet I'm wearing perfectly. And there's orange in our harness, our gloves are orange, lots of orange in these pictures, which is nice. You've got it in the lettering there too. But this is pretty busy, so we need to be mindful not to, overwhelm the patterns or the photos for that matter. So this is a possibility, but I also have another paper pack that could work. I've been pairing the woven textures with a lot of my beachy and tropical layouts, and it goes quite well. So it's just a collection of, there's tans and kind of gray tones in here, and they all have these different like basket or kind of wicker or burlap, if you will, lots of different patterns here. And I kind of like that one. So what if would that fit that way? No. What if we just cut some photo mats here to make that one stand out, and then possibly this one? You can see there's a lot of browns in the photo too from the wood dock structure there, and I think that kind of looks nice. And that's a better choice. I think that this one, although it matches perfectly, I think it's just a bit too busy. So I'm going to cut a couple photo mats for these smaller photos. For this one, I have a different idea, but I think possibly these pictures too. Yeah, I think that looks good. I went ahead and cut a photo mat for each of these, and this is such a great paper collection because it can be mixed in with so many others, kind of like the Country Woods wood grain paper. It's a great neutral. Here comes Brian again. What is going on, Brian? Why are you so needy this morning? Now, I have a strip of pretty Peacock cardstock. This measures 5 by 12, and you can see how that really adds a big pop of color and helps those photos to stand out against the background. And to bring that color over to the other side, we will mat our main focal photo here on the same pretty Peacock cardstock. Now for my title, I'm not sure, but I saw my friend Amy recently use this old stamp set called Seaside. So I went ahead and stamped out Oh What a Feeling, and we're just going to let this live here for now because again, I'm not sure. We'll move on to the embellishing. I've got my trusty Happy Hibiscus, and I have a ton of flowers in there, but they're not in the right color. So we are going to customize our own embellishments to match the layout. And I'm going to create these in a couple different ways. So first we have the outline, and it's all three attached. So I'm going to stamp these on white cardstock using Calypso Coral ink. I think that'll complement the photos really nicely. It is easy to achieve lots of different looks with this stamp. You can even use the coordinating embossing folder if you want to add some texture. So I am stamping the outline again on white cardstock, and I want to create several of these. So we're doing kind of an assembly line. When you use a stamp positioner, they are in the same spot, so it makes this process easy when you want to create lots of stamped impressions. So let's go ahead and wipe this off, and then we will switch to the filler stamp. Now, you could just stamp these on colored cardstock, or you could use a little ink blending to add a little color to the middle, or just leave them white cardstock there. But we have the inner portion
to fill this if you don't want to color them. And I'm lining them up. So these are individual stamps as to where the outline was all in one. And that looks pretty good. So we can pick them up with the Misty Door. And now I want to do a lighter version of Calypso Coral. So we're using the exact same ink pad. Whoops, don't drop it. And we want to, again, make this lighter. So we are going to blot it off one time and use this second generation. So we get a nice lighter contrast compared to the darker outline. And since we're using our stamp positioner, this is already going to be lined up and we can repeat the process. So ink it up. Bring in your piece of scratch paper here, stamp down one time, and then stamp again before re-inking for that second generation, or some people call this stamping off. Now let's go ahead and instead of blotting it off onto scratch paper, I should have just done this on cardstock. I want full strength flowers without the outline. Oh, that's kind of going off the edge. That's okay. I can always tuck that under the other flowers. So if it's not a perfect little white border around the outside, that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and die cut all of these. And now we have all of this beautiful ephemera. And then I cut leaves and flowers from the coordinating die. I die cut those from Petal Pink and Old Olive cardstock. And then from my stash, again from Old Olive cardstock, I have cut these Monstera leaves from a close to my heart die set called Sprigs and Leaves. I just love these leaves for tropical layouts. I think they add such a fun touch and definitely help capture the vibe. So I would like to make a little cluster over here in the corner, and we'll add a few leaves. So I'm working with the larger images and then we'll fill in with the smaller ones. And I think that looks pretty good. Maybe some of these little flowers, some smaller leaves, and actually let's just leave that for there for now. And then I want to create a cluster here. I do have a lot of photos on this right-hand side, so we might just do a center cluster, but possibly something down here. Now, I do want to add a little something up here because the sketch indicated a little detail, and they actually had a banner, so I will cut that in just a moment. But let's tuck some leaves in, and I might add some of these smaller flowers, but I'm not sure yet. So using the same pretty peacock paper, I cut this little banner tail piece, and this provides a perfect anchor spot for this flower, so it's not just floating up there by its lonesome. Now, I love adding wordy bits, or you can call them subtitles, so I'm going to check through my stamp collection to see if there's anything that would kind of resonate with this particular adventure. And I have gotten in the habit of checking my stash fairly regularly. I have an embellishment binder that you can flip through. It makes it so easy to find things. So I came across this, and you guys, these are so old. Some of these, this is like a fabric badge. It says Ultimate Adventure, and this green is perfect. The adventure is in red, but I think it's close enough. But yeah, I think that badge is probably at least a decade, maybe more. It's been around a long time, and I'm so glad it's perfect. I also have this here. It says On the Edge, and that's from an old close to my heart set called Urban. Now the blue doesn't match, but the outside color is perfect. But sometimes you can overdo it on the word sentiments. So maybe we'll just start with this one because it's absolutely perfect. So maybe over here, I don't want all my words on one page. So let's move that back to the right-hand side. And there's a lot more open real estate on the bottom. I kind of want this in the middle, but I'm switching the photos so that that stands out against the white background better. It was disappearing into the green of the photo that's on the bottom now. I have been making lots of progress on this album documenting the excursions. So I mentioned earlier this was a close to my heart incentive trip. We went to the Riviera Maya in 2024, so fairly recently. And we went on all of these fun excursions, and I've been having a great time documenting them using the Otterly Adorable collection. I typed up my journaling, which prompted me to change my title. So I used the mini alphabet die to die cut from Old Olive cardstock, Jungle Thrills. And now I've got this big open spot for the story. So when I type my journaling like this, I use a text box and I space my sentences 1.5, not double space, just 1.5. And I really like the spacing that gives me, so I can just eyeball it and cut right in between using a guillotine trimmer. And I get these nice little sentiment strips, and it's a fun way to add your journaling. I could have just typed it out and glued it down there, but I love being able to cut them into strips and stagger them back and forth to fill the space. Did you see that other kitty just stroll by a moment ago? That was Toad. I don't know what's going on. The Toad and Brian hardly ever come into my craft room. Everybody wants to hang out today, and I am just loving it. This is a great method for journaling if you have a pattern paper in the background too, because it allows the pattern to show through while still being able to read this story. So I am gluing down my title. I'm happy with this, and I'm using the edge of the photo above it to line that up. You could whip out your T-square ruler if you'd like, but it's close enough that it's easy for me to line these up. So I just am making sure they're straight, and I won't make you watch the whole process, don't worry. But what I want to do is line up the letters underneath it. So the T will be under the J, and the H will be under the U, and so on. So I think that'll look nice and tidy. I was happy to see the mini alphabet dies and the alphabet a la mode in the new catalog. So they were around last year and they're carrying over, and I'm so glad because they're such a great little staple to have in the craft room. I am going to stamp I Love This from the Love This Moment stamp. I've got a little chipboard or paperboard file tab there. If you have a file punch, you can easily recreate these. We'll stamp that in Pretty Peacock ink, and I just wanted a little something over the top of the photo here, and it matches the photo mats on my photos from the woven texture paper. So let's go ahead and adhere that into place there. I want to add a little bling. I have these gorgeous hexagons, all in the perfect colors for this paper pack. They are called Shades of Green hexagons. So I have to laugh at myself. I was showcasing this take your pick tool, and I talked about this little spatula, but on the other side is a pick, and I don't know how I didn't know it was there. A couple viewers mentioned it in the comments of my video, and I'm like, what? I had to run over and check it out, and I just, yeah, it's there. Even more about this tool to love. So I'm going to use the wax tip here. It's perfect for picking up little bits of bling and placing them on your layout. So it's like a little putty tip. It is refillable, and you just kind of slide it and it sticks when you lift it off the sheet, and you can place these little bits of bling around the embellishments here. So I don't have a whole lot of room. They're not going to show up on that cardstock, so we're just adding a few. And I love how they're varied shades of the same color. Let's move that one up there. It's not really showing up. Maybe a darker color? Yeah, that one looks good. I do want to point out, if you feel this is a bit too busy, you could take this white paper all the way to the center to make it like 112 by 24 canvas, and that would tone down this section so you'd only be seeing the busy pattern paper around the outside. Again, we were just in this dense canopy surrounded by trees, so I quite like the feel and think it plays in nicely to the design. So the sketch was our jumping off point, and I just want to take a look at this, and we can kind of see where we started from and how we adapted it to make it work for me. So I kept the frame style layout. I kept this little banner up here, and I kept the 3 elements. So we have them layered. I've done the exact same thing, but I've made them bigger and just spread them out to accommodate my title and my story. So, and then of course we made a simple companion page to go along with it. And it's going to be so fun to see what my crafty friends are doing, because they may flip the sketch. They may do a single page, double page. You'll have to check out their videos to see how they turn out. I did add a few of those little tiny flowers to the clusters, and I'm loving the shine of those hexagons. So you can see more flowers up there, and I put a little tiny sequins in the center of that and added some more flowers here. I also snuck this arrow in from my stash. I just love arrows, and they kind of just work on any layout. They're a great little filler when you need just a little something.
I do have all of the supplies I've used listed in the description box below, along with a link to the playlist to see how my crafty friends are going to use this sketch to give you even more ideas. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you very soon here on YouTube.